Tracy and Emily are smart, lovable sisters who really love Lucifer for the plot. Yeah, the plot, which they overthink.
Hi there. I'm here with my sister, Emily Guy Birkin. She does not use a hyphen.
And I'm here with my sister, Tracy Guy Decker. She does use a hyphen.
And together, this is Lightbringers, where we illuminate the deeper meaning of the crime-solving devil TV show. And we are definitely overthinking it.
So much overthinking.
We're cracking season 6.
Nobody's favorite season.
So today we're going to talk about episodes 1 and 2 of season 6, Nothing Ever Changes Around Here, and Buckets of Baggage. So yeah. So let's dive in. These are seasons 5 and 6 are the ones that I watched like in real time as they were released.
Me too. Yes.
Although they were on Netflix, so I still binged them because they dropped a whole season or half a season in the case of 5 at a time. So, okay, so let's talk about these two.
So we're back in the back with the same motorcycle cop from the first scene of episode 1, season 1.
Right. It mirrors. It's interesting because in that very first scene of the pilot, he was in the Corvette, but in the black. In a black suit, and now he's in a white tuxedo, which I think is meant to help symbolize the fact that now he's good. I'm putting quotes around that word. Yeah, right. We're with the motorcycle cop, right?
Who did buy himself something pretty? Lots of cocaine.
Lots of cocaine, right? He lost his job. He lost his wife, and he lost his house. Now he lives in a boat,
and he's lost any forward momentum in his career.
Right.
Which is probably well, you know what? I was going to say it's the most realistic aspect of this episode that, they wouldn't fire him from the LAPD. But then I'm thinking, like, actually in the LAPD, it might not actually affect his ability to get promotions in the real world.
Right. And then we go into this, like, bizarre magic.
I had the thought watching this that someone in the writer's room is into magic and really wanted to find a way to and it also makes a little bit of sense in that that's one aspect of like LA weirdness that they haven't explored, because I know very little about magic. But I believe that LA is one of the places where you will find more than your normal share of magicians.
So I appreciated the kind of contrast that the writers were trying to give us between Chloe, who seeks the truth, and Lucifer, who seeks wonder and sex and drugs and debauchery. But like, I didn't buy it. Like, I didn't buy it at all. And the moments when like the old guy is like telling how the trick is done, and so Lucifer has his fingers in his ears and is like singing to himself so he doesn't hear it. I didn't buy that at all. Like, that just did not work for me. For Lucifer in the abstract as a millennial old person, nor Lucifer in the specific of like this Lucifer Morningstar played by Tom Ellis that we have seen kind of, I just didn't buy it.
Yeah. It's the first time they have introduced any idea of this. And it's like my pet peeve where I hate it in long-running TV shows where they want to introduce some sort of like conflict, and so they pretend that it's always been there.
Yeah.
Like years and years ago, there was a show called Caroline in the City that I really loved from the 90s. And there was her assistant was in love with her, but couldn't tell her. And in one episode, he's just like, oh, yeah, well, I've never felt anyone like this about anyone except maybe Julia. And that same episode, Julia shows up. And I'm like,
well, that's convenient.
You could have had this conversation 3 episodes ago. Just had that conversation 3 episodes ago and let it be. And so that's what this feels like, is like out of nowhere, they've decided this is true about Lucifer. And it does not fit with the character that we have known for 5 years now. And he, a wonder seeker, a pleasure seeker.
Yeah.
And there is a pleasure in being tricked, not tricked, but
tricked. I mean, I actually think there are ways you could have gone at it. Even they reference Houdini with the imagery repeatedly, and Houdini talked about the difference between people paying you to trick them and tricking people into paying you. Like that was like when he was exposing fake psychics and things, and in his second act of his career,
I am Houdini and you are a fraud.
Yeah. I feel like I should know what that is, but
you're the one who told me about it. So
I have such a great memory.
So he was so famous once he had retired from his escape artistry that and he wanted to believe in spiritualism. He wanted to believe that there was a way to contact people after death. And he hated the fact that so many frauds were out there. So he would disguise himself and go to these seances to see what they were doing and to figure out how they did it, which he could do because of his background. And so as soon as he figured out how they were doing it, he would take off his disguise and shout, I am Houdini and you're a fraud, which is something that I feel like should be worked into casual conversation on a daily basis, because what a great phrase. And the thing is, nobody knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Even the person who told me about it.
Told you about it.
What are you talking about?
So when I was working at the Jewish Museum of Maryland, we did an exhibit about Harry Houdini, and so I learned a lot about him, and I feel like it was there, and that maybe even I could have integrated that with the Lucifer that I know, and sort of it's one thing to have people pay you to trick them, and it's another to trick them into paying you. He kind of enjoyed the being tricked and not knowing how the trick happened, and because he is a celestial and is magic. One of the very first scenes of the whole series, we see him with that weird coin that kind of levitates, and it just doesn't. And even his deals where somebody wants something, he manages to make it happen. I just didn't buy it. Yeah. And I think if you're right and somebody in the writer's room really wanted magic to explore magic in one of the procedurals, I think they could have done a more thorough job of integrating that with the Lucifer that we have grown to love.
And I was wondering, I meant to look it up and didn't get a chance to, but I was wondering if that place, the Magician's Bar, whatever it was called, is a real place in LA.
Oh yeah, I didn't look it up either.
Because I thought that might be part of it too, is they're trying to, because there is a bit of travel tourism into this show in some ways. Yeah.
And even pop culture a little bit, because though they make up pop culture stuff, they also, in the next episode that we watched today, that's a real movie, Super Cop, with Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh. So yeah, maybe it is a real club. Yeah. Listeners, let us know if you know.
If you know any LA listeners. The other thing that got me was I also didn't buy that he would be annoyed that Chloe was trying to solve the mystery, because that's one of the things he really likes about her. Watching this episode, and this is only the second time I've seen it, I actually can recall when season 6 dropped, It dropped on, it was like a Friday or something. And you and I both were like, okay, we're not getting any work done today. And we both watched about the same time. And you texted me and you're like, I didn't love it. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. But as I was watching it this time, I was sitting there going like, what do the two of them even have in common? You know, like this does not feel like a cohesive, loving, happy couple. And I think some of this is the pitfall of any long-running show, in that you take a small characteristic about a character and then you have to keep upping the stakes just to be able to keep the story going. And also because if it was funny once, then it's going to be even funnier the next time, you know, that sort of thing. So if, for example, like if you watch all 10 seasons of Friends, like the character of Ross from...
Why would you do that?
I'm
sorry.
We got a real fan here.
Did I say that out loud?
It's the kind of TV show that I can have on in the background, and it's just, it's like comfort background noise for me. Yeah. But the character of Ross in the first season is a real person, and by the 10th season is just a collection of really, really obnoxious quirks, because everything has been magnified so much. And so that's the sort of thing that I feel like is kind of what's happening.
To Chloe here. Or to both of them?
To Lucifer, definitely, because he's making it about him. Like, okay, let's get out of here because, you know, we want to have the rest of our date. It's the introduction of the idea that he's into wonder. It's a bit of a betrayal of the character, it feels like. Yeah.
Even the montage of Carrol interviewing everyone, and then the thing about like him saying that he was there at the founding of the club in 1960 whatever, and how old are you, and like Lucifer has never lied about who he is, but I feel like he was more cagey about things that would be confusing,
a giveaway
to humans before. So like, I feel like the season 1 Lucifer, if in fact this had been a thing, would have said something like, I knew the people who founded it. You know, like, which is still true, and still like, wow.
And I gotta say, I do appreciate, and I feel like they nailed this when he says, what's not to like about magic? You never lie, but you obfuscate without ever specifically lying. Yeah. And like, yeah, that would appeal to him. I can completely understand that. So I appreciated that. But yeah, this episode just doesn't work.
Yeah. And that same montage that I'm talking about with Carrol, that was used in the trailers when they were releasing it, with the weird clown like figure behind him.
Oh gosh.
Like behind Carrol, while Carol's talking, there's this like weird, like sort of clown. So it's like very surreal and absurd. And it was almost like somebody was like, well, we got to make the commercial so that people are like, what the heck is going on? I have to watch and find out. And it felt
staged.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah. The subplot of the dinner party at Linda's house.
Yes.
That I felt like was better.
Yeah, it was more believable, at least. It was more believable. Characters. Yes. Yeah.
But it's a similar
sort of exaggerated characterization of Linda, I think. It also then led to some pretty like just like bald exposition on the part of Menadiel that felt forced. Like it almost felt like, since we just saw the writers kind of like wink at the Good Place folks, it sort of felt like, well, we can put in some like philosophical, like moral of the story stuff and let Amenadiel deliver it. And it's not like they haven't given us some of that in the past, but this was just felt very heavy-handed and less nuanced than it has in the past. I mean, and Linda even says like, that's nice, but I'm not there. So maybe that was part of the point, was that it was heavy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I stand by my original text to you. I didn't love it.
Yeah.
I didn't love it.
And we'll talk about Carrol more because he's more important to the second episode. Let's talk a little bit about the second episode.
Yeah, which I just watched today, which is why it was fresher in my head, where we open in that, like, they're meant to be having raucous all over the penthouse,
breaking furniture
sex, because she has the piece, so she's got superhuman strength. I guess it wasn't supposed to be, but like, that wasn't sexy. Like, especially compared to like that first scene when they first get together, and it's just so, you know, and he sort of offers his hand and she takes it and he leads her into the bedroom, and it's, I don't know, it just felt like intimate and genuine and really hot.
Yeah.
Like HAWT hot. And this was none of those things, which I guess was the point. It was supposed to be funny, I think. Maybe.
It just also, like, it feels like it's serving a very specific kink. Rather than it being like, yeah, this is what you do. You know? I don't know. I just, like, I'm having trouble imagining what it's supposed to look like that leaves this path of destruction.
Yeah, with furniture turned over. And
yeah. And I just...
Maybe I'm, like, giving away too much about my sexual proclivities, but, like, I don't... Even if I had superhuman strength, that doesn't really seem
it wouldn't change any. Well, like, you still need to be delicate about certain areas, even with superhuman strength. You don't want to squeeze anything too hard.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very, very bizarre, because there's no sense that Lucifer is like, yeah, I can't, you know, throw my partners around like I'd like to because it would hurt them.
No.
And granted, he is, you know, the king of desire, and so he fulfills the other person's desire. So her desire is his. So, okay, she wants to do this.
Oh, presumably she's throwing him around.
Yeah. But so, like...
That makes it a little hotter.
Yeah. Well, like the caveman thing, except gender swapped, where she just throws him over her shoulders, like, you're coming with me right now.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
It's so weird. And
okay, moving on.
I guess we're just befuddled. I mean, and maybe
that's
the guy
the point.
sisters are just so vanilla.
Yeah.
That's entirely possible.
Entirely possible.
I've been married, it'll be 15 years on Thursday. So
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
Which means it's been 14 for me, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And mazel tov to you. So it's been a while since we've been on the market. Put it that way, not like...
I think we should move on and not include this part, honey.
All right, we'll stop with where you said mazel tov. Anyway, so Amenadiel, like, and I get the impression they're trying to hit some beats from season 1. You know, Amenadiel, your return to heaven has been requested instead of your return to hell has been requested.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, he doesn't want to go off half-cocked, which is what Chloe says.
Yeah.
Which is very un-Chloe.
Yeah.
And of course, he needs to go talk to Linda because he has no idea how to care about all 7 billion humans.
Yeah. Which is what he thinks he needs to do because of what Ella said about God.
Yes. So because Carol's new, you know, he's the newest member of the staff, he's going to help him so that he can learn how to care about people who are not within his circle.
Or how to help people who he doesn't care about.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He wants to help people he doesn't care about, not care about people.
Yeah, because in fact, that's what he's disappointed at the end when he realizes he's come to care about Carrol.
Who is the most vanilla milquetoast white guy? Like,
it's really hard to believe that he was undercover in Vice. It's hard to believe that
he's complicated. No offense to that actor, it's fine, but
or that Ella Lopez would be as like tongue-tied around him as she seems to be. I mean, how is kung fu movies enough?
Yeah. And like he's supposed to be like he's a little bit dorky too in that initial, but I believed Pete more.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, he seemed more genuine as a kind of somewhat awkward geek.
Yeah. And Ella had to kind of like give herself permission to like, because he wasn't her normal type.
Yeah. So, I mean, that actor had yeoman's work. I mean, like joining this kind of cast for the last season.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do that. But, and some of it, I know there are reasons why they cast a white guy, and they wanted it to be because later on we see issues of race in the LAPD.
Right.
So I think that was an intentional choice. But boy, is he just vanilla. And like, I mean, to be fair, he seems perfectly capable of like, he just accepts the pronouns preferred by the drag queens and, takes them seriously, which is not necessarily what you would expect from someone, white guy, strong jaw person. But that's a bare minimum level of.
But that's also played very intentionally to his discomfiture in their presence, right? I mean, that's
yeah. He is very uncomfortable with the hostess. And when Lucifer's like, "Oh, you two, there's a connection here with Busty," he handles it well for being discomfited, but there's just nothing there.
Yeah,
he's just boring.
Yeah,
and I like the only interesting thing about him is his name is Carrol, and even like finding out that he's a recovering alcoholic, that could have been interesting, but they don't even get into it. He's like, "Yeah, I was in rehab for a year." Like, okay. What happened? Like, and that's not the story that needs to be told necessarily, but there's just nothing there, and Ella deserves better.
It also, like, in that final scene with Ella, well, not the final scene, the almost final scene, when he's apologizing for like trying to be like a bad boy, she's like, "I broke into your house and I stole your personnel files," and he's like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
What? I mean, I think if she had, I just feel like it should have been written differently. Like, she should have led with, "My last boyfriend turned out to be, I didn't know, he almost killed me. And so I kind of have trouble trusting. And so I did these things and I really shouldn't have, but PTSD," as Lucifer said, which was a clever little pun. She didn't lead with that. Based on what she led with, like, I don't believe that even this milquetoast dude would just be like, "Okay." I think he would be like, "Nice knowing you. I'm going to go get a restraining order." Like, something. You did what now? And then kind of calm down when she says about Pete. But there was like no emotional reaction whatsoever.
None.
To I broke into your apartment and I stole your personnel file. No emotional reaction whatsoever. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so infuriating because it could have. Were they writing in a hurry?
That's actually exactly what I'm thinking. I feel like maybe they were shooting like in pandemic conditions, right? So maybe they actually were writing in a hurry because they weren't sure they were going to do it, and then it was greenlit, and then I don't know, but that is my impression as well, that the writing feels rushed because it's just not as nuanced as it has been in previous seasons.
So my husband walked in while I was watching the second episode, and the scene between Dan and who we will find out is Rory, where Dan goes like, "Oh, that's something else I feel guilty about," and takes out the notebook and is writing it down. And he's like, "Did they change writers?" That's what my husband said. Like, these are the same writers as from before? I'm like, he's like, "Because that's bad writing."
Wow.
I'm like, don't sugarcoat it any. Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah. That also feels unlikely that, because he said he's like in a previous conversation with Lucifer, he's been working on all of it. He's got the notebook. Really? This is the first time you thought about the fact that you shot Lucifer?
Yeah.
In 1,000 years?
Also, how would Rory not know that her sister's father tried to kill her father?
Yeah.
There's no way.
I mean, unless Chloe kept it from her somehow.
Like, how? I mean, I can't imagine, like, because she knows Maze and Eve and Amenadiel. Like, I can't imagine that
Dan was already dead by the time she was born. I mean,
sure.
And I'm sure that they only told, like, you know how it happens with dead people. You don't talk about the shitty things they did.
Yeah, I don't know. And then that she wouldn't know who Dan was.
Well, that is different.
Like,
I think
she would know
it,
and she would have recognized him.
And in fact, even if what I'm saying is accurate, there would have been surprise because she would have thought of Dan as, like, on a pedestal.
Yeah, and her big sister's
based on the way
dad.
That Trixie would have talked about him.
Yeah.
So it would have shocked her that Dan could be the one if she didn't know already, right? The other thing in the hill scene that I think I said to you at the time, like, what was going on with Michael?
Yeah.
What?
Oh, that really
was like
bothers me.
A small piece of, was it fan service? We didn't see his face. It's not like they couldn't get the actor.
Yeah.
Like, why did they include that at all? It was such a throwaway.
So I really, really don't like the fact that Michael is there because it undercuts
the second chance.
The second chance.
Totally undercuts the second chance that he was supposedly giving Michael by not killing him. I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to confine you to
Earth, basically.
Scrubbing hell with a toothbrush.
Yeah.
And the wounds never healed.
Yeah.
And it's been 1,000 years in hell.
Oh, that's a very good point, because Lucifer's
scars
healed over.
I mean, Lucifer's were cut off with a demon blade, presumably, and these were cut with Azrael's.
With the flaming sword.
With the flaming sword.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it then cauterize it?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make any. It makes no sense, and I don't know why it was included, because it didn't help anything.
If it was fan service, it did not serve this fan. Like, it just confused me and kind of
Yeah.
upset me a little bit.
Yeah. Well, because it makes Lucifer seem vindictive. Because
Yeah.
how did he end up there?
Right, because someone would have had to have actually
Someone would have had
carried
to
him
have
there.
carried him there. Yeah. So I don't get it. Yeah. I also, there's two aspects of, there's two trailing spouses basically in these two episodes. There's Eve following Maze to hell, and she has no plans. And then there's Chloe following Lucifer to heaven, and she has no plans.
Right.
And I'm really uncomfortable with both of those, because in both cases, they haven't really thought about what they're going to do. And some of that is, I think the writers have no idea what the hell they're going to do. And so they just kind of, like, should I take Trixie out of school? Like, I mean, those questions, and she's, stir crazy and going and being really bored and all of that, which is reasonable. She's not used to having time on her hands. That's fine. But there's two examples of this, of like, why didn't either of them assert themselves?
I mean, I feel like the writers were more interested in the mirroring, that the leading spouse actually doesn't want to go in the first place, and so this was just like an additional symptom of the fact that this is maybe not the right choice. Is the trailing spouse. I feel like that mirroring was more important than the actual agency of the trailing spouse in either case. But yeah, it's a worthy question.
It's just, I can kind of comprehend it so on Chloe's part, not thinking about it is partially because she's not familiar with the world celestials, and she had that, like, she learned that what she thought she knew about her parents was wrong, and that her mom wanted to support her dad.
Right.
And so this is like a grand gesture she did. And then she didn't really think through the after as much. With Eve, and I don't know, I guess they've written her.
I mean, we see in future episodes that Eve has this thing, not just future episodes, we've seen it in the past with Lucifer, where this is her pattern. She remakes herself to make her partner happy. That's how she was taught to
behave.
Yeah. To be. So that actually does make a certain amount of sense. Although the I'll throw dinner parties just makes her look stupid, which it doesn't. That's unbecoming, I feel like, on the part of the writers, because I don't feel it as though they have done that to her in the past. She has seemed naive at times.
But never stupid.
Yeah. And that, like, I'll throw dinner parties in hell, that just sounded stupid to me.
Yeah. I mean, like, if she'd said, like, oh, you've got thousands of siblings, and, like, I'd love to meet all of them. And so, like, if she'd led with that instead of it, like, I'll meet all the souls. But it does. It's rushed.
Yeah.
Hence what I said at the very beginning, nobody's favorite season.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because I was so looking forward to it.
Yeah. I carved out time in my work weeks. I was like, took vacation time so that I could watch it when it first dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, when it first dropped and I was seeing, like, everybody was like, who is this chick with the boots? The person who turns out to be Rory. I saw like a whisper on the internet that was like, I bet it's their kid from the future. And I was like, please don't let it be their kid from the future. Please don't let it be their kid from the future. Like, I just was like, I really don't, that is not the storyline I want. And so I was like deeply disappointed when that reveal actually came through, because I just was like, the moment I saw somebody suggest that might be it, I was like, no.
Yeah. Well, part of my issue with that, and we'll get into it further, but Lucifer's made it clear from the very beginning that he has no interest in having children. And like, I want media to take that seriously. Like, I want media to take, like, for the people who say, I don't want children, they're fine, they're not for me. I personally want to be child free. I want media to not immediately undercut that.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, I say that as someone who knew from babyhood that I wanted to be a mom. I have always known that I wanted children. There was never any question in my mind whatsoever that I was going to become a parent. And there is plenty of media for me.
Yeah.
There is no media out there for the people who say, I don't want children. I like children. I like them in my life. Like he cares deeply about Trixie, even though he jokes about her not being, about being an urchin and all of that.
Right.
But I would much more appreciate a story about, because we don't have it. We don't have those narratives about it being okay that is how your life works, and you like that, you want that.
Yeah.
So
we
that
actually have
also
the opposite, where we don't believe people, especially women.
Yes,
but people in general, we don't believe them. You'll change your mind. You tell them.
Exactly. So when I was in my 20s, I worked at a Boys and Girls Club. There was a woman there who worked in the library who loved kids, didn't want her own. And I remember being befuddled. I'm like, because I thought that if you didn't want kids, it's because you didn't like them. But she clearly loved kids. She worked with them. And she's like, I just don't want any of my own. And I remember being like, I don't understand. Like, it just didn't compute for me. And that's part of what I'm talking about. Like, I should be like a 20-something who is relatively savvy should be able to compute the idea that you can like something without wanting it for yourself.
Yeah.
So
we certainly don't have any models of that.
Yes. And in the same way, it's another thing that really drives me nuts. It's similar to, there's a hand waving about things like fertility as well. Our cousin pointed this out to me once about how anytime there's a film where infertility is a part of the story, they're magically pregnant by the end. And this feels like a similar sort of thing. He never had to worry about it because it didn't happen. But clearly he really wanted this, because otherwise he wouldn't have self-actualized working sperm.
Yeah.
So we can get into that more in future episodes. But I get a little frustrated at the fans who say that the end of the show was a betrayal of everything that came before. And we'll get to that, and we'll get to what they're talking about, because I do not agree. They say it's a betrayal of his thing about like free will and, making our choices and stuff like that. I disagree with that entirely. But I think they're fair in saying that season 6 as a whole, in terms of Lucifer's story arc, is a bit of a betrayal on what's come before, because of things like this, where like, instead of taking the devil at his word that he doesn't want kids, the minute he learns, like, he's all in. And you know what? That's fantastic if that's what happens for someone who finds themselves in a situation where they're going to be a parent without having planned it.
Yeah, it is a very different sort of thing because of the self-actualization that they have given us. Mm-hmm. You're right. That makes it actually a very different kind of scenario. It's not the same as if a human man realizes that he has inadvertently fathered a child. It is not the same, because in this case, with this character, with this universe, the way they've set it up, that necessitates that in some way he wanted to be a parent. Yeah.
And I mean, to be fair, Lucifer has made it like, it's been very clear he doesn't know what he wants often, and that's part of his journey. But why did it have to be this?
Yeah.
And so much of what's going on is his daddy issues. and is feeling abandoned by his father. And so they wanted to explore that with the idea of him having a child who feels abandoned by him. And I get that. I get that the story beat of that and the satisfaction of that moment, but it just doesn't fit with what's come before, with the devil character that we have known for 5 years so far. So it's, there are some joys coming up within this season. And I don't want to be like, oh, season 6, because there are some things I'm very glad that we're going to be seeing. But it was not the ending that this story could have had.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk a little bit about, I think the best scene in both of these is when Lucifer and Busty are singing. That's a pretty awesome duet.
That was going to be actually a piece of my fluff because, which is fine. It's fine. But when Ellis sings in that scene, it almost becomes sort of an American accent, which I guess is what happens. I don't know. Something about the lid. I don't know. But the enunciation kind of sounds more American when singing. And so it sounds like Michael. Like when I'm watching it, I'm like, why does he sound like Michael? Which is really unwelcome and odd response from me as I'm watching. Yeah. But what did you want to say about it?
So, well, I love their dance, their musical interlude.
Yeah.
And then the conversation with Brian, once Busty has removed her wig, was really lovely. I really appreciated what Brian was saying about feeling insecure about being a pretty drag queen.
Yeah.
And there's so much discourse about drag queens right now.
Right now in particular, yeah.
Yeah. And it's an art form that I don't completely understand. But I as I was watching, I was thinking like how gorgeous her makeup was. Actually, all of the makeup that we see. And the amount of work that would go into that level of makeup and just how fabulous she looked. And the idea that there's this sense that if you're going to, put that full face of makeup on and sing in sequins, with a huge wig, that would be supreme confidence. And yet there's still things that one could feel insecure about. And that it just was I felt like a very lovely moment in this, in the center of this episode, that had me at the end when we learn who the killer is, feeling terrible for poor Brian.
Who's lost his mentor and his lover. Yeah.
And oh my goodness, how heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree that whole exposition, or it was a conversation with Brian and Lucifer too. And thinking about that was, I agree. It was really beautiful. And, so we have someone in the writer's room who was like, let's get magic in there somehow. And there's somebody in the writer's room who said, let's get drag in there somehow. And I think that sort of thinking about that question about who you really are, who you're meant to be, like within by using drag as a sort of as a vehicle for that conversation, I think that was really interesting and useful. I mean, I think using drag there served several kind of different goals. One of them was just milquetoast Carrol's discomfiture, but it was much, much bigger and deeper than that. And I do think that was even the specifics of the way that Brian was talking about, like, I always play the humor because I was afraid if I just went out as beautiful that people would laugh at me, not in a good way. Yeah. Like that deeply resonated. Oh, I really heard that. Yeah. I really heard that. Yeah.
Well, and I had forgotten that's, I mean, I had remembered that there was there's a time in a drag club, but I'd forgotten that scene. And so even before that, I had been thinking she looks fabulous during the song.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, so that's something too, is now, and some of that is, I have been trying to deprogram myself from the idea of what society considers beautiful.
Hmm.
So I was mentioning before we started recording, we were at the Wisconsin State Fair today, and I love people watching at places like the State Fair. But everywhere I turn, I kind of wanted to, and I've been encouraging myself to be like, look at how beautiful that person is. Look how beautiful they are, of all shapes and sizes, backgrounds, haircuts, clothing, everything, like seeing the beauty in every human. And so I know that because I've been trying very hard to do that, I'm much more likely to notice beauty that might be overlooked by people who are not necessarily grappling with their relationship with what society calls beautiful. But that to me, like, struck me also that Brian, without the wig, is like, I'm afraid to go out as beautiful because people might laugh, not for the right and in the wrong way. Whereas my immediate reaction was just like, oh my God, she looks fabulous. Like, I want a pink sequin dress for myself.
I think it's really, really interesting because that sort of people laughing at me. I was talking to a friend of mine fairly recently, and we were talking about the fact that, there's some things that we have been taught to denigrate in ourselves so much that if someone were to praise that aspect, whatever it was, we would think they were making fun of it. So like, I was born with a cross eye, and I've had surgeries and like whatever, and the glasses hide it mostly, but I'm so self-conscious about it. And so if someone were to say to me, like, I actually think your cross eye is kind of cute, my reaction would be, screw you, don't make fun of me. Like, that would be my reaction if somebody were to say that. And that's what was kind of like activated in me listening to Brian tell the story. Yeah.
When I was in college, I was seeing a therapist on campus who at one point told me that he thought that my emotions were one of the best parts of me. I stopped seeing him because I had been taught that my being emotional was the worst thing about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I hear that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad for that moment in these episodes. Yeah. And, I know Brian is fictional, but I hope Brian's okay. And that Busty is just bringing down the house every night.
Yeah.
And I also found myself like, what would my drag name be if I could do drag?
Did you come up with something?
Well, there's there's your pet and the name of the street you grew up on. So way back when I was first out of college, someone said that like my porn name would be Bonanza Tamarack, which I actually think sounds more like a drag queen name.
Yeah.
So, Bonanza Tamarack.
Okay. I like it. So I guess, would that make me Pixie Briarcliff?
Oh, that's fantastic. Bonanza Tamarack and Pixie Briarcliff. Double feature. Oh, all right. Man.
Well, we've been talking for almost an hour, so I'm going to say my piece of fluff I already shared earlier was that when Ellis sings, it sounds like Michael. Do you have something that you want to share?
Yes. During the dinner party, it's just a tiny little moment. Maze picks up a deviled egg and like brings it close to her face and goes, ugh. And like, I don't even know why I noticed it, because it's going on in the background while Eve is talking to Amenadiel and Linda. Now they're doing the classic sitcom table setup, which I hate. It's just like, I know it's easier for the cameras, but nobody eats dinner like that. But it was just like, Leslie Ann, I love that you're on even when you're not on. Thank you. That is a perfect moment.
Nice.
Yes. like that very much. So I think that's all my fluff. I'm sure I had a couple others, but that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay, I'll take it.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'll see you soon to continue our explorations of season 6.
Well, until next time, Pixie Briarcliff.
All right, Bonanza Tamarack. Tamarack?
Tamarack.
All right.
All right.
Our theme song is Feral Angel Waltz by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Visit the show notes for the URL. I am an artificially generated voice, powered by Narrakeet.com. Lucifer is a Warner Brothers production that first aired on Fox and then Netflix. Tracy and Emily are not affiliated with Fox, Netflix, nor WB. If you liked this episode, subscribe to Keep Overthinking with them, and visit the show notes for other ways to connect.